We have come into this room of hope, where our hearts and minds are open to the future. We have come into this room of justice, where we set aside our fear to name freely every oppression. We have come into this room of love, where we know that no lives are insignificant. We have come into this room of song, where we unite our voices in the somber and the beautiful melodies of life. It is said that our worship should comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I say we are all afflicted and we are all comfortable sometimes. May our time together this morning be both a comfort and a confrontation. May we find peace in times of tumult. May we here invoke tumult into lives of peace. May we here find calm in times of restlessness. May we here allow restlessness to evolve into action. Let this be the place you consider what you've never considered. Let this be the place you imagine for yourself something new and unthinkable. May this hour bring dreams of new ways of being in the world. Come, let us worship together. These words from Libby Stoddard and Sharon Wiley welcome all who have gathered this morning for our Sunday service. Welcome to those of you who are here in person at Essex Church, and to all who are joining us on Zoom, and anyone watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Patricia, and I'm a member of Kensington Unitarians. This morning's service theme was chosen to tie in with National Poetry Day, which took place just a few days ago on Thursday, and which this year was focused on counting. So our service title this week is Poems to Count On. We invited a number of congregational members to choose poems that were meaningful to them, which they'd found helpful or comforting. The poems that speak to them in tough times and offer wisdom for life's journey. So later in the service, we'll hear selections and reflections from Sara Helen, Shari, Julia, Michaela, and Brian. Let's light our chalice flame now, as we do each week. It's a moment for us to stop and take a breath, settle ourselves down, put aside any preoccupations we came in carrying. This simple ritual connects us in solidarity with Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists the world over, and reminds us of the proud and historic progressive religious tradition of which this gathering is part. We gather this morning as one community, a community united by common ideals: love, justice, diversity, freedom, equity, mutual care. Yet look around, think about who is gathered here. Become aware of the beloved souls all around you. Each an individual, every one of us with our own particular story, needs, strengths, and faults. We light our chalice today, honouring our common connection and also the uniqueness that lives within each of us. Let's sing together. Our first hymn is 194 in your purple books, We Light the Flame. We do sing it from time to time, but I'll ask Andrew to play it through to refresh our memory. For those joining via Zoom, the words will be up on the screen, as they will for all our hymns today. Feel free to stand or sit as you prefer, and let's sing up as best we can. Let's take all those joys and concerns into an extended time of prayer. This prayer includes some words by Ella Forrester. You might want to, first of all, adjust your position for comfort. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. There might be a posture that helps you feel more prayerful. Whatever works for you. Do whatever you need to do to get into the right state of body and mind for us to pray together, to be fully present here and now in this sacred time and space with ourselves, with each other, and with that which is both within and beyond us. There's a chair here. Spirit of life, God of all love, in whom we live and move and have our being, we turn our full attention to you, the light within and without, as we tune into the depths of this life and the greater wisdom to which and through which we are all intimately connected. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and stillness at the very center of our being. Now let us sit quietly and wait for the voice within us. Let us simply listen and be still for a while. Some of us this day will feel empty and tired, grey and listless. But emptiness and tiredness are also a prayer, a cry for spiritual food and an aching need for soothing refreshment and strength to go on. Some of us feel alone, aware of our need for someone to love us. This too is a prayer without words, a longing and a sorrow which seeks for the healing spirit of love, the embrace of God's concern for us in spirit and in soul, and in the practical hands of caring people. Some of us are happy enough, some content, some have hope and plans for tomorrow. All these are prayers of giving, prayers of gratitude, prayers of creating thought and dreams. So let us gather with our wordless prayers, prayers of our inner self, our inner truth. May God be with us in those prayers, sustaining them and enabling us to grow more aware of our worldless selves. May we be aware of the waters of our own spirit, which are always there for us to drink. If we will sit still, wait, and listen. And in a few minutes of shared silence and stillness now, may we speak inwardly some of those deepest prayers of our hearts, the joys and sorrows we came in carrying in our own lives and the lives of the wider world. Let us each lift up whatever is on our heart this day and ask for what we need most. Spirit of life, God of all love, as this time of prayer comes to a close, we offer up our joys and concerns, our hopes and fears, our beauty and brokenness, and we call on you for insight, healing, and renewal. As we look forward now to the coming week, help us to live well each day and be our best selves, using our unique gifts in the service of love, justice, and peace. Amen. We're going to sing again, and our next hymn is number 21 in your purple books. Come and find the quiet centre. Please stand or sit as you prefer and sing up as best as you are able. Come and find the quiet centre, hymn number 21.
Good morning, everyone. I have a poem to share which I think many of you will know and possibly think too straightforward to count on, but I'd like to share a different way of thinking about it that I've found really helpful. It's The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveller. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. The way this poem is often talked about is all about those last lines. I took the road less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Taking the less well-trodden path, making the difficult choice, following your conscience instead of the crowd. These are good Unitarian lessons. But when I used to read this poem with incarcerated men as part of a prison reading group run by the Reader Organisation, they often had a different reading. It started with annoyance. The paths are the same, they'd say. There's no difference between them. So how can one be less travelled by? It doesn't make sense. I'd never thought of it this way before. They were right, of course. These men who often found poetry intimidating or frustrating. The poem very clearly shows both paths, both choices, as equal. One is just as fair as the other. Both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Even that sense of one being less worn than the other isn't really borne out. The speaker says, one has perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, but then immediately equivocates. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. So both paths are less travelled. There's no real difference between them. Or as my therapist often tells me, sometimes there's no right choice or no wrong one. Sometimes choices like paths in a yellow wood are much of a muchness. What makes all the difference then isn't the specific choice you make, it's that you make a choice at all. I often get decision fatigue or choice paralysis. I can't even decide what to call it, but whether it's what to have for dinner or what to do with my life, the specific choice is less important than actually making one. Being an active participant in your life and not letting yourself drift along on other people's choices. Taking ownership of your decisions and following where they lead. That has made all the difference.
Good morning, everyone. When Jane asked me to select a poem that had consoled me and to write a reflection on it, I struggled at first because I couldn't think of a poem that I relate to in that way. Then I thought of this section of the Bible. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord, and they will give you the desires of your heart. The phrases come from Psalm 37, verses 3 to 4, and I came to know them in the early 1990s. At that time, a stranger in London, I fell into a charismatic Christian fellowship. The group practiced a type of bibliomancy, or divination from the scriptural text. One would get out one's Bible, close your eyes, and open it up to any random place. Then put your index finger on a page and open your eyes to see what text you had landed on. The idea was that the Holy Spirit was guiding you to a text that was relevant to your situation, guidance specifically for you. So on one of these occasions when I was praying with my boyfriend of the time, my dip led me to this section of the Bible. So why, though, has that particular verse remained with me? Well, the truth is, I have a tendency to collapse. Not that you would necessarily realize this unless you know me very well. I disguise it, I make excuses, I only agree to social engagements where I can plan for it not to happen or where there is a way of escape. But it does happen, still, even at this age, so many years later than the first episode. During these episodes, I feel a combination of uncomfortable physical symptoms and negative thoughts that can be completely overwhelming. And almost always they send me to my bed for hours, lying there trying to cope with the negative feelings and thoughts. At these times, those 3 lines of the Bible often come to my mind. When I am struggling with physical discomfort and negative thoughts, lying in bed and can manage to think of nothing else, those words can often be of comfort. Their simplicity, absoluteness, and conciseness mean I can repeat them over and over in my mind to help combat negative thoughts. Sometimes I draw on only a portion, repeating, "Trust in the Lord," over and over again. I don't even really believe in an interventionist God, but there is something in those words that continues to resonate, a sense that the world will ultimately be okay, no matter what I am feeling in that moment. It's just one way that the Bible continues to have relevance to my life.
Thanks, Shari and Sara Helen. We're moving into a time of meditation now. And to take us into the silence, I'm going to share a very short and playful poem by Eve Merriam about how we might approach poetry. Then we'll hold 3 minutes of silence, which will end with the sound of a bell. Then we'll hear some music for our continued reflection. So let's do what we need to do to get comfortable. Maybe adjust your position. Put your feet flat on the ground. As we always say, the words are an offering. Use this time to meditate in your own way. How to Eat a Poem by Eve Merriam. Don't be polite. Bite in. Pick it up with your fingers and lick the juice that may run down your chin. It's ready and ripe now whenever you are. You do not need a knife or fork or spoon or plate or napkin or tablecloth, for there is no core or stem or rind or pit or seed or skin to throw away.
From the words on our service today, great poetry can alter the way we see ourselves. It can change the way we see the world. And this exemplifies the poem that I chose today. It's called The Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. And I'd like to apologize to Miss Angelou for my reading of the poem. If you've heard her read this poem, you know how very powerful and poignant it is. A caged bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful twill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams, his shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful twill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. In 1969, Maya Angelou's book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, was published. Shortly after the poem of this same theme, called Caged Bird, was written and published. I was introduced to this poem as a 15-year-old in my youth group at the United Methodist Church in a very small town in Illinois. Our youth group was guided by Reverend Hunt, who focused our efforts more on issues of social justice and civil rights awareness over Bible study. It was a risky decision to take in that small town of 2,500 inhabitants, but it was the sign of the times. As a part of our youth group's inquiry into the civil rights movement, we delved into Angelou's poem. The poem depicted the oppression and struggle of African Americans in the United States at that time. It was controversial to be introducing that theme. The study of the poem and the civil rights movement was followed by a trip to Chicago, which was about 2 hours away, to learn about a program called Operation Breadbasket. Operation Breadbasket was run by Reverend Jesse Jackson, who we did get to meet, and who was instrumental at that time in pressuring white businesses through boycotts and negotiations to provide more jobs and economic opportunities to Blacks. Jackson went on to become a well-known leader in both civil rights and in politics. This was really my first authentic experience at looking at what was happening in race relations in the United States, in challenging my beliefs and opening my eyes to the real world. It was exciting. For me, this poem was a creative catalyst for giving me a new perspective to some realities that were not often talked about or addressed in a small Midwestern town, nor in a church youth group. The study of the poem and other texts, and the experience of the youth group really molded my thinking and even my professional choices for life. While most of you know me as one who has had a privileged career in international education, I spent over a decade of my early career involved in community organizations and education in the inner city. The poem depicts so well the stark contrast between the bird of freedom and the one caged from oppression. I had not thought about that aspect of life deeply in that way before this introduction. Maya Angelou herself went through much pain and oppression in her life. She endured through the help of her powerful human spirit. While the poem speaks of Black Americans, its formidable message touches anyone who has felt oppressed by society, family, gender, or even religion. The caged bird never stops singing for freedom. There is always the enduring hope and resilience of the human spirit to set wings free and to flourish. Thank you.
I think I'll follow this gravity with an evocation of joy, as best I can. And Patricia may have to help me do this reading. So, Jane asked us to share a poem that has comforted us in some way, at some point. For me, what I'm going to share is the ultimate in joyful collaboration with human limits and our potential. It is gifted to us by the Persian poet, Sufi poet of the Middle Ages, Hafiz.
He does the job.
He does the job of acceptance to perfection, although this whole poem is about not perfection, and for that being good enough. So,
Validating.
let's forget it.
I won't.
Yeah, I won't say anything clever around this poem, do any interpretation, because I think it speaks for itself, and that's what poems in my book should do. But I will tell you how I came across this poem, or how it came across me, rather. And that was on Bath Station, when my friend Peter took me to the London train and said, "Listen to this poem, this is for you." And so I took it very personally subsequently. Since that time, this poem has lived in my heart, in my mind, and has made its way to many of my friends in distress. As I said, it's kind of soul food for me, pure soul food. Whenever I need reminding that walking the spiritual path is not about perfection, but sticking to the dance. Hafiz concedes in the poem, which you'll hear in a minute, that our partner is not notoriously difficult to follow, and even his best musicians are not always easy to hear. So, this is the heart of living for me. That in wonderful, unpredictable ways, we just have to do what we have to do. And that is enough. It's good enough. So here's the poem. It's called My Sweet Crushed Angel. You have not danced so badly, my dear, trying to hold hands with the beautiful one.
For holding the heart runs. Yes, for holding the heart runs.
Trying to hold the hand of the beautiful one.
Here it is.
I think this is first, isn't it?
You have walked.
Sorry, it's just my eyes are not doing what they should.
You have waltzed.
Yeah, you have waltzed in great style, my sweet crushed angel, to have ever neared God's heart at all. Your partner is notoriously difficult to follow, and even his best musicians are not easy to hear. So what if the music has stopped for a while? So what if the price of admission to the divine is out of reach tonight? So what, my dear, if you do not have the ante to gamble for real love? The mind and the body the mind and the body are famous, I'm sure you know, for holding the heart ransom. But Hafiz knows the beloved's eternal habits. Have patience, for he will not be able to resist your longing for long. You have not done so badly, my dear, trying to kiss the beautiful one. You have actually waltzed with tremendous style. Oh, my sweet crushed angel. So I hope you're comforted in spite of my stutterings. Thank you.
Ode 11 from the first book of Odes of the Roman poet Horace. Do not inquire, we may not know what end the gods have for you and for me, my friend. And avoid your horoscopes. Better to accept what will be, whether we are granted more winters, or this is the last to wear out the seas against the cliff. Be wise, decant the wine, limit your long-term hopes. As we talk, time runs on. Seize each day. Don't believe too much in tomorrow. Not the most poetic of poets, but I've known this ode and Horace's other odes for getting on now for 60 years. And I think he's the poet that I've most returned to in the intervening years. A few of the odes are concerned with public and patriotic ideas, but the majority are about personal and private themes, amounting to no more than sensible advice about coping with life. Take the middle way. Don't rock the boat. Enjoy the ordinary. Be contented with enough, and occasionally cast a satirical eye on life and on yourself. Alexander Pope, the poet and essayist, said of the odes that they expressed what oft was thought, but never so well expressed. When I was caring for my wife during the year or so in which she was dying, I kept a translation of the odes on my bedside table. And sometimes, just before going to sleep, I would read one or two of them. Ode 11 was probably the most read of all. Horace felt like a steady and quite avuncular presence when I needed a gentle arm round my shoulders, and to be reassured that taking each day as it came was what was needed. And to be too concerned with the future was a waste of that day's needed energy. He remains a friend now, reminding as I pass through older age but one night awaits us all. The road to death is travelled once only. Ode 1, number 28.
Thanks to everyone who offered a reflection. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Thanks, Brian, Michaela, and Julia. Time for our last hymn now. It's number 39 in the Purple Book, For the Splendor of Creation. It's to a well-known tune. Let's sing up and let's enjoy it. Thanks to everyone who offered a reflection today. Sara Helen, Shari, Julia, Michaela, and Brian. Thanks to Abby and Andrew and Benji for lovely music. Thanks to Ramona for tech hosting. Thanks to Shari for co-hosting. If you're joining on Zoom, please do a hang around for a cuppa, for a chat. And thanks to Liz for greeting and Julia for making coffee. For those of you who are here in person, do stay for a cup of tea that will be served in the hall next door. And we've got various in-person activities coming up. This Wednesday at 7 p.m, it's the community singing group. Let Jane know if you're planning to come along in case of last-minute changes. We've got an online heart and soul contemplative spiritual gathering tonight and Friday at 7 p.m. The theme this week is questions. We gather for sharing and prayer, and it is a great way to get to know others on a deeper level. Sign up with Jane if you want to join in. The next meeting of the Better World Book Club will be on Africa is Not a Country by Deepo Faloing. We've got a few, I think there's just one library copy left, it's at the back there. Let Jane know if you want to join that session on Sunday, 27th of October. Jane is back, you will be glad to hear, and everything will go smoothly next week for our Harvest Festival service. And she encourages you to bring along some homegrown veg or some favourite vegetables to decorate the table. And the theme of the service will be Our Daily Bread. So if any of you are bakers and might like to bring along some homemade bread, she'd be grateful. Details of our various activities are printed on the back of the order of service for you to take away and also in the Friday email. Please do sign up to the mailing list if you haven't already. This congregation very much has a life beyond Sunday mornings, and we encourage you to keep in touch, look out for each other, and do what you can to nurture supportive connections. I think that's everything. Just time for our closing words and music now. Our time of worship draws to a close. May what we have found here of truth and beauty, insight and challenge, love and comfort remain with us as we go our separate ways, and may the blessing of this time together light our way through the week ahead, calling from us the strength and courage we need to meet the days to come. Amen.